If this 21-mile stretch of water shuts down, gas prices in America could explode within days, not weeks, not months, days. That stretch of water is the Strait of Hormuz, and right now, in March 2026, it is in crisis. You've probably heard the name. It sounds like a foreign policy issue, something for diplomats and generals, something happening 7,000 miles away with no connection to your daily life. But here's what nobody is saying plainly. It's already in your gas tank. It's already in your electric bill. It's already in the price of everything that gets shipped across this country. The crisis is not coming. It is here. Stay with me for the next 10 minutes, because by the end of this video, you will understand one of the most important and least explained economic stories of 2026. If you want honest, clear explanations of global economics without the spin, subscribe. We break down what the headlines don't. Let's start with the basics, because the geography here is everything. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow channel of water that sits between Iran to the north and the United Arab Emirates and Oman to the south. At its narrowest point, the point where ships actually pass, it is just 21 miles wide, 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. That's it. Through that 21-mile gap, every single day, between 17 and 21 million barrels of oil pass. That represents approximately 20% of the world's total daily oil consumption. Saudi Arabia sends its oil through there, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Iran itself. Qatar sends its liquefied natural gas through there, gas that heats homes in Europe and Asia. There's no pipeline alternative that can replace this volume. There's no backup route that handles anywhere near this quantity. The Strait of Hormuz is, by any reasonable measure, the single most important choke point in the global energy system. And it is controlled, geographically, militarily, strategically, by Iran. But here's the terrifying part that most coverage leaves out. Iran has threatened to close the strait before, multiple times. In 2011, when the US and Europe were tightening sanctions on Iran's nuclear program, Iranian military commanders publicly threatened to block the strait and warned that not a single drop of oil would pass. Oil markets spiked immediately. The threat alone was enough to move prices. In 2019, during escalating tensions with the Trump administration, Iran seized oil tankers in the strait. It shot down an American drone. It attacked Saudi oil facilities. The message was unmistakable. If pushed, Iran will use the strait as a weapon. And in 2024 and into 2025, as conflict in the region intensified, with Houthi forces in Yemen, backed by Iran, attacking commercial shipping in the Red Sea, the message was repeated in a new form. The choke points of global trade are not safe. They are pressure points. And Iran knows exactly where to press. Now, in March 2026, those pressures have not gone away. They have intensified, and the American economy is feeling it, whether Wall Street admits it publicly or not. And then something even worse happens when you look at the numbers directly. The United States produces a significant amount of its own oil. So you might be wondering, why does the Strait of Hormuz matter so much to America if the US is now one of the world's top oil producers? The answer is that oil is a global commodity. It doesn't matter where you produce it. It gets priced on a global market. When 20% of global supply is threatened, the price of all oil goes up. American oil, Canadian oil, North Sea oil, every barrel, everywhere. And when the price of crude oil goes up, the price of gasoline follows, not weeks later, not gradually, almost immediately. Gas stations reprice faster than almost any other consumer product. A spike in global crude on a Monday morning shows up at the pump by Tuesday. But it doesn't stop at gasoline. Everything that moves, trucks, trains, cargo ships, planes, runs on fuel derived from oil. When fuel costs rise, the cost of shipping rises. When the cost of shipping rises, the cost of everything that gets shipped rises. Groceries, electronics, clothes, medicine, building materials, everything. The Strait of Hormuz crisis doesn't just affect drivers. It is a tax, an invisible, unvoted, unavoidable tax on every American who buys anything. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening in the region right now. And this is where we need to be precise, because 2 separate crises are unfolding, and most coverage mixes them together. The first crisis is the Red Sea. Starting in late 2023, Houthi forces based in Yemen, backed and armed by Iran, began attacking commercial shipping vessels in the Red Sea. This is a different waterway, a different geography, but it matters enormously. The Red Sea connects Europe and Asia through the Suez Canal. When Houthi attacks made that route dangerous, major shipping companies rerouted their vessels around the entire continent of Africa, adding thousands of miles, weeks of travel time, and enormous cost to global trade. Insurance rates for ships in the region exploded. Some routes became commercially unviable. That disruption alone, without a single barrel of Gulf oil being blocked, contributed to shipping cost increases that fed directly into consumer prices worldwide throughout 2024 and into 2025. And those routes have still not fully normalized. The second crisis, the one that is potentially far more severe, is the direct threat to the Strait of Hormuz itself. This is Iran's territory, Iran's geographic leverage, and this threat operates on an entirely different scale. While the Houthi attacks disrupted a major trade route, a closure or credible threat to the Strait of Hormuz would cut off the energy supply of the entire global economy. Not slow it down, not reroute it, cut it off. There's no alternate route for 20 million barrels of oil per day. There is no detour around Hormuz. If it closes, the world's energy system stops. Iran has been modernizing its military capabilities specifically in the Gulf region. It has fast attack boats, anti-ship missiles, naval mines, underwater drones. It has spent decades studying exactly how to make the strait unusable, or just threatening enough to use, as leverage in negotiations with the West. The Houthis are one instrument of Iranian pressure. The strait itself is the ultimate weapon, but the real danger is something nobody talks about: the ripple effects that go far beyond the gas pump. Let's make the midpoint of this video a moment you don't forget. If the Strait of Hormuz closed for just 30 days, not permanently, not forever, just 30 days, oil could hit $200 per barrel. Some analysts say higher, $200 per barrel. That means gasoline in America surging past $7, $8, possibly $10 per gallon. That means a cross-country truck delivery costing double what it costs today. That means every product on every shelf in every store in America repricing upward almost simultaneously. That means families who are already choosing between groceries and rent being pushed to a breaking point that no government stimulus check arrives fast enough to fix. 30 days, that's all it would take. And Iran knows the exact number. They've run the calculation. The strait is not just a waterway. It is a loaded weapon pointed at the global economy. And the finger on the trigger belongs to Tehran. Think about the American agricultural system. Modern farming is almost entirely dependent on petroleum. Tractors run on diesel. Fertilizers are synthesized from natural gas. Pesticides are petrochemical products. The trucks that move food from farms to processing plants to grocery stores all run on fuel. When oil prices spike dramatically, food prices follow. Not eventually, quickly. Farmers face higher costs immediately. Those costs get passed to processors. Processors pass them to retailers. Retailers pass them to you. A severe oil shock doesn't just mean paying more at the pump. It means paying dramatically more for food at a moment when American households are already stretched thin from years of inflation. And then there are interest rates. When energy prices spike, inflation spikes. When inflation spikes, the Federal Reserve faces pressure to raise interest rates, or at minimum to keep them elevated longer than planned. Higher interest rates mean more expensive mortgages, more expensive car loans, more expensive business borrowing, more expensive government debt service. Every single dimension of the economy tightens at once. The Strait of Hormuz is 7,000 miles from Washington, D.C., but its consequences arrive on Main Street faster than most people realize. Let's put this in the context of where the U.S. economy already stands, because the timing could not be worse. America, in March 2026, is carrying over $36 trillion in national debt. The Federal Reserve spent the past several years in a difficult battle against inflation, raising rates aggressively, slowing the economy, squeezing households. Fight is not fully won. Inflation has cooled but not defeated. The housing market remains broken. Consumer debt is near record highs. This is the economy that would absorb an oil shock, not the economy of 1973, which had low debt and high industrial capacity. Not the economy of 1991, which was in a brief, shallow recession with far less structural fragility. This economy. Today's economy, with all its existing pressure points. An oil shock hitting an already stressed economy doesn't just add to the problems, it multiplies them. It accelerates the things that are already going wrong. It takes what was manageable and makes it unmanageable. Economic historians call this a compounding crisis, and the conditions for one are sitting right in front of us. Here's a comparison that makes the stakes clear. The 1973 oil embargo, when Arab members of OPEC cut off oil exports to the U.S. in response to American support for Israel in the Yom Kippur War, caused gasoline prices to quadruple in a matter of months. Lines formed around gas stations. Rationing was implemented in many states. The U.S. economy entered a severe recession combined with high inflation, a phenomenon economists called stagflation, that took years to resolve. The 1973 shock was caused by a deliberate political decision to cut supply. It was not a physical blockade of a strait. It was not a military confrontation. It was a diplomatic and economic decision, and it was still devastating. A physical crisis at the Strait of Hormuz, whether through Iranian military action, an accidental escalation, or a sustained campaign of tanker attacks, would be faster, more severe, and hit an already weakened economy. The 1973 crisis is not a worst-case comparison. It may not even be the right frame for how bad this could get. And it gets worse the closer you look at America's geopolitical options. The United States has significant military assets in the Gulf region. The Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain. Aircraft carriers operate in the region regularly. The U.S. has the capability to escort tankers, to challenge Iranian harassment, to project military power into the Strait. But military presence is not the same as a solution. The Iran nuclear negotiations have stalled. Diplomatic channels between Washington and Tehran are at their most strained in years. And the broader regional dynamics, the ongoing conflict in Gaza, the Houthi situation in Yemen, Israeli-Iranian tensions, Iraqi political instability, create a web of interdependencies where one escalation triggers another in ways that are difficult to predict and nearly impossible to contain quickly. Every military move the U.S. makes in the Gulf carries a risk of escalation. Every escalation risks a more aggressive Iranian response. And the most aggressive response Iran could make, without firing a single shot at an American vessel, is to close or credibly threaten to close the Strait. That threat alone, sustained over weeks or months, could do significant economic damage without a single dramatic military incident. So what does all of this mean for you, right now, in your daily life? It means that the price you pay for gasoline is not just determined by supply and demand in America. It is shaped by the decisions of Iranian military commanders, by the calculations of Houthi fighters in Yemen, by the diplomatic failures of multiple administrations across multiple decades. It means that when your grocery bill goes up, when the bread costs more, when the chicken costs more, when the orange juice costs more, part of that increase traces back to energy costs, that trace back to global oil prices, that trace back to tensions at a strait most Americans couldn't find on a map. It means that the connections between global geopolitics and your personal finances are real, direct, and operating right now, not in some theoretical future scenario, today. You are not separated from what happens in the Persian Gulf by 7,000 miles of ocean. You are connected to it by every liter of fuel that goes into a truck, a tractor, a plane, or a ship that is part of the supply chain that delivers your life to you every single day. Understanding this is not about fear, it is about clarity. Clarity about why your costs keep rising even when the headlines say inflation is under control. Clarity about why energy policy is not some abstract debate for wonks and politicians. It is a direct determinant of your standard of living. Clarity about why what happens in the Middle East is not someone else's problem. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide, but its consequences reach into every home, every car, every grocery cart in America. And in March 2026, those consequences are not a future warning. They are a present reality. If the Strait of Hormuz closed tomorrow, the shock wouldn't start in the Persian Gulf. It would start at your gas station, then your grocery store, then your heating bill, then your rent. The question is not whether you'd feel it. The question is how long before it becomes unbearable. Tell me in the comments, where do you live? And how close are you already to the financial edge? Because millions of people are closer than they admit. And this conversation matters.